This is Tara McGinnis, and this is Theatrical Makeup Design Interactive. In this lesson, we will be going and putting on nose wax and tooth wax. Nose wax is the simplest, fastest way of attaching artificial nose to your face. It's not very stable, but it is very fast and easy and doesn't require months of planning or buying special prosthetics or building special prosthetics. It's very simple. Tooth wax. Tooth wax is also a way you can go and do exciting things to your teeth that don't involve putting on enamel over your teeth. Supposedly both the wax and the enamel are acceptable things to go over dental work. However, I've heard that if you're feeling touchy, the wax is the safer thing. Both of these substances were not originally designed for makeup. Black wax, like this, was originally designed as cobbler's wax. It was used as a way of sealing off joins in shoes and making it so that they were more waterproof. It's an old form of waterproofing your shoes. Nose wax is also sometimes called mortician's wax. And this brings up one of the interesting things about makeup. A lot of the innovations in makeup were made not for people to go and do makeup on stage or on screen, but in order to go and do makeup on people who had some sort of disfiguring accident, like they went through a windshield or whatever, some sort of problem with their face, but their family wanted an open coffin funeral where they looked the way they remembered them in life. And so over the years, morticians have figured out a whole series of makeup tricks to make somebody look more like the way they looked when they were alive while they happened to be lying there dead a few days later. So this is one of the early things that was used for that, and actors took to using it in addition to another old trick, which is to take cotton wool and blend it with spirit gum and build up a nose. Both of those work, and the cotton wool is actually a bit more stable but more difficult to do. The wax is pretty simple. People fight it mostly when they have hot hands or problems with doing it. But the main thing that you need to know about the wax is if you go and clean your fingers between each step and do it very simply, it will stick to your face. So you want to keep it simple, and in between every time your fingers touch the wax, push it in, you then wipe off your fingers before going and pushing it in again. Otherwise, it wants to stick to your fingers more than it will want to stick to your face. Another substance that will help you to stick it to your face is spirit gum. Now, spirit gum, the earliest makeup books I've been able to find mention it, though they don't mention it by name, they mention it by its ingredients. Spirit gum is made out of resin or shellac mixed with alcohol. So it is resin that has been dissolved in alcohol to go and form a thin, sticky sort of contact cement. Some people have problems with this, but more people have problems with the substitute, which is to use latex. What I've just done is I've put a thin coating of, actually I'm going to put some up here, thin coating of wax, thin coating of spirit gum onto the place where I'm going to put the nose, and it will help make the wax stick to my nose a little more firmly. In the meantime, I'm going to take my wax container and the back end of a brush, and I'm going to carve out a piece of wax that is the size I need. Now, as you can see, when it first comes off, it has lots of little bits that are flying off, things that want to stick. It's very sticky stuff. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to try and make it into a slightly less sticky ball, because you don't want a nose that looks like the way this looks now. You don't want little fly-off bits. You want something that's solid, like a nose. So I'm going to pull that off of there, and it's immediately going to try and stick to my fingers. As you can see, there are little bits sticking there. And so I'm going to form it into a ball using the center part of my hands, where the center part of my hands is a little bit less sticky. I'm forming it into a ball. I'm then going to change that ball into a little sort of sausage. And this is what I'm going to stick on my nose. Okay? However, I'm going to put it down, and I'm now going to clean my hands. Because if you don't clean your hands between each step, it will stick to your hands and not to your face. Now, the particular makeup I'm using this nose for is going to be a sort of lopsided witch. In other words, if I wanted to have a slightly longer nose, or a slightly shorter nose, or a slightly different nose, the easiest thing for me to do was to go and highlight and shadow and use paint, the way you saw me use them in previous lessons. However, if I want to get something really fairly extreme, then I need to have a prosthetic, some sort of three-dimensional thing stuck on me. Okay, I'm tacky. So I'm going to use this and put it into my area where the nose is, like so. Stick it onto the spirit gum. Obviously, this is not how it's supposed to finish. I will go and press in, and as I go, I'm going to sculpt it into the lumpy big nose that's in my rendering. In between each step, as you can see from the motion of my shoulders, in between each step, I'm cleaning fingers. Every time I touch the nose, I have to go and clean the fingers. So.
Can you show profile shot? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, I'm going to push down, clean fingers. Push down, clean fingers. Now at this point it's starting to get to adhere. I want to get a little more of it down near the tip of my nose, so I'm going to shove some of it that way. Clean fingers. Push down. Clean fingers. Let's see it as it's changing. Now, at this point, instead of just pushing it into the face, I'm actually going to go and drag a little bit of ends of it onto the face, so that instead of being a little lump sitting on top of the spirit gum on my nose, it's now going to have sections of it that seem to blend seamlessly with the sides of my nose. And you want to do that very carefully, because when you do this, as you're doing it, the wax will stick to your fingers while you're doing this. Not just a little bit, it's really going to stick to your fingers. So you have to push down, and then as you drag, you need to keep pushing for some distance so that all the wax that's on your fingers adheres to the face. And that's how you get that fairly smooth join in spots. So keep doing it until the wax is off your fingers. So in this case, I'm not having to go and knock it off of my fingers below, because it's being scraped across my face. And so by the time the finger gets out here, it doesn't have wax on it anymore, because it's all come off onto the face. Now, that's still fairly straight. I'm going to now go and put a bend in it because the rendering, I'm using the lopsided aspects of my face and exaggerating them for this Green Witch character. Now, the rendering will look backwards from my finished product. The reason for that is I want to do the rendering so that it looks the way I see myself in the mirror. So if I'm working on a rendering, especially one that's going to have a strong right or left-handed appearance, I'm going to want to go and take that rendering and do it while I'm looking at myself in the mirror so that I can make the most of anything on my face that might be slightly lopsided, like the fact that this side of my mouth goes up more than that, or with my eyebrows and eyes, this eye is squarer and this eye is rounder and this eyebrow tends to go more this way, and so on. So I can take these tiny things that are different in my face and exaggerate them into an interesting lopsided form if I'm looking at myself when I'm doing the rendering, and then use that rendering to give me the opposite picture. So obviously, if you were doing a rendering that you were going to use on making up another person, and they're not doing the makeup, you're doing the makeup on them, you would do it the right way around. So now I'm going to give it that lopsided nose. All right, it's got an indentation here. And a little bit of a push that way. And drag and drag. Now, on my nose, the spot that most wants to come loose is right up here. So the makeup design I have actually has a shadow in here so that it can hide it if slowly during the course of the play bits of the nose come loose at that spot. It won't be quite so obvious. In general, when you're using nose wax, you pretty much have to try and figure out places to use it on your face where your face doesn't move very much. The obvious place where that occurs for most people is right here through the center of their nose. So that's a place you can use it. But there are other spots that don't move that much. So when I move the rest of my face around, for instance, this part of my cheek doesn't move that much. And right here, this moves very little. So I'm also going to use wax to give myself a nice witch wart. Make that into a little ball. Set it down. Clean the fingers. Pick it up again. And find that spot here where I'm going to put the wart. And I'm squishing the edges in. Same way I did with the nose. Also down here, many things move, but this part of my chin doesn't wiggle that much. So that's another place I can use and put a wart. Now, if you find that your face is just too mobile, and mine tends to be rather mobile, so you can get away with taking a small thing like a wart and simply painting it on. If you find you have too much trouble with this sort of thing, you can do that. However, it is very nice having three-dimensional warts. Now, in the design of the nose that I've got here, not only is there a bit of an indent here, here's something that an example of something going wrong. This is like little flying bits because I put my fingers down and I lifted up and it was sticking to my fingers. So you can see that little bit going wrong. Now I'm going to clean my fingers And then I'm going to pull that down. Pull it down. Pull it down. Taking a section like that and trying to do anything other than pulling it down is not usually going to work unless you can put enough cream on your hands that there's just no way it's going to stick to your hands. So here I've got this very artificial looking witchy nose. Look at those edges a little better. And I want to add a wart. Now this is going to be easier than my simply sculpting it into the nose to begin with. Just gives it a little bit better chance of really sticking out there. It wants to stick to my fingers. Clean fingers. As soon as it starts sticking to your fingers, in fact, before it starts sticking to your fingers, it's usually best. Do that. Okay, so we have the nose by itself. As you can see, all this wax, lots of dimensionality, all this nose, it doesn't really do very much on its own. Wax is good for providing a little bit of extra help for dimensionality, but the most important thing, actually, is what you do with it afterwards with your makeup going over it. So what I'm going to do is make a nice perky green color of witch. Let's see. Using, let's see which of these two is going to work better. You don't want to come off that, do you? Using a water-based makeup that puts on a fairly extreme color. In this case, a metallic green. This is Ben Nye Lumiere, which is a green color with a lot of mica in it, so it has a sort of metallic sheen. Now notice what I am doing. I'm putting on makeup, I'm putting it all over the place. I'm not putting it where the wax is. I will put it where the wax is, but I will do that absolutely last, because the way I'm putting it on my face, which is nice and fast, involves my rubbing it across the face. But if I rub across the wax, I have a good chance of rubbing and knocking off my warts in my nose, or getting the sponge stuck in it. One of the reasons, other than the fact that I have better green colors in a water-based makeup than I do in cream-based makeup, a wart just went. This is not a disaster. Here is my wart. Obviously that part of my face was too mobile and wiggled too much. So I'm going to put that to one side, and I'm going to do the rest of the makeup, and then I will reaffix it with spirit gum as we get toward the end of the process, so that I'm not having it have to stay there too long. I think this part of my face must be mobile. The last time I did this, the wart in the same location fell off. So, the biggest battle you have through this whole thing is trying to figure out how to go and get the makeup on without knocking the wax off. Trying to keep the wax on your face, and you're trying to get makeup up and on over it. And the water-based makeup gives you a little bit of an advantage for this kind of thing because it tends to be a little bit less inclined to let your brush stick in to the wax. So when you're using your brush to go and put on this stuff, it will have a tendency to repel the wax. Okay, this is not looking even enough. Need more green. Okay, now as I'm starting to get to the waxy area, I'm changing from the move where I was sort of rubbing it in to one where I'm simply patting it on. And the reason for that is it makes it less likely that I'm going to bend or pull off or have the sponge try and stick to the wax. So you pat it on. Pat it on here. Any little extra bits I want to do. Oh, wrong green. I can put in with the brush to get into those crevices that are created by having a wart on the nose, so I can be sure to get complete coverage of the base in green. Now, the makeup design for this particular witch is an example of how you can go and take what you've learned in doing highlight and shadow and old age character makeup. It can go and help you to do things that are non-realistic makeups, this being a fairly non-realistic makeup. I haven't met any green people lately. So, what I'll do is do a character makeup, but the difference will be that the base, instead of being a normal flesh color, will be green, and the highlight and shadow will be a lighter color and a darker color that goes with that color, with the internal logic of what I want this person to look like. Your internal logic, however, can pretty much be anything, as long as your shadow is always a darker color and your highlight is always a lighter color. So in this case, I'm going to be using some electric yellow as my highlighter that I picked up at Hot Topic. It's just a over-the-counter crazy makeup color. And then I have, for a medium shadow, I've got a very bright but darker than this green blue to go and be part of the shadow. And then a purple color, both of them Ben Nye, extreme colors like this that have the metallic in them. And those will end up being the shadow. So it's like doing a lopsided old age makeup for a witchy character, but I'm using a whole series of unnatural colors. You can do these kinds of makeups with any combination of colors so long as your shadows are always darker than the base and the highlight is always lighter than the base. It can be any weird combination of that, though, as long as you have a base that's somewhere in the middle and you have your highlight and shadow on either side. It just needs to go and have an internal logic to it of this is the shadow, this is the highlight, and this is the base in the middle. So, the first thing I'm going to do is do the moderate shadows in the blue. Try and get enough water out of there that I'm getting some pigment. Now, because I am working from a rendering, I can almost do this like color by number. I don't really have to even think about what I'm doing because I've done a drawing ahead of time. It tells me what I'm doing. And in this case, what I'm doing is I'm making the most of that slightly lopsided eyebrow I've got and making this eye go a little bit to one side. Now, I have these forehead wrinkles that go like so, and like so. However, as I pointed out, you can go and mess with the ends if the ends don't show very much. So these are going to go up here, and these are going to go down here, thus giving me a slightly more lopsided appearance. As long as the center goes through where the forehead really does scrunch up. The fact that I've messed a little with the ends is not going to go and register. You're just going to register that the forehead wrinkles move when my forehead moves, and that there's a shadow happening on them. The fact that the shadow happens to be blue on a green face really doesn't make that much of a difference. Now, on this one, I have a slightly different eye that's getting painted in. This one's going to follow the bag under the eye. And squirry line through here. Now, I mentioned that this part of my face wiggles a little bit, and so I get cracks in the top part of any nose I do. If, however, I have a shadow that goes through the middle of that while I'm shading the nose, then if there are any strange crack things that happen, it will actually look like it's part of a deliberate part of what I've done with the nose. I'm then going to put shadows on the side that emphasize this lopsided appearance. So it looks like I have a nose that sort of tilts and has a divot in it, like somebody bit a chunk out of it. My familiar got mad at me. You gotta watch out for those flying monkeys. So it goes and takes this extreme thing and makes the most of it. Then blend it out the same way you would normally. You have to be rather delicate while you're doing this because you have a thin layer of wax that you pull down here. And if you push too hard, your brush wants to get stuck in it. And there's nothing quite like having a brush stuck in your nose for messing up your nose. Okay. Finally, I get to do my nasolabial fold in the usual spots. But again, because this is something I have a fairly uneven thing on my face, I'm going to make it even more uneven. So, go like that. And on this side, I go all the way down. And on this side, I have another little smiley line. So this side goes up a bit. And this goes like that. So I'm taking things that are naturally occurring on my face that in this case are irregular, and all the parts that are irregular I emphasize. Sort of like the opposite of corrective makeup. It's the anti-corrective makeup. Now, something that I can do that probably won't be noticed, almost anything you do around your mouth, if you make it smaller or wider or so on, as long as you don't move the corners out, which gives you a strange clown-like appearance, evil clown usually. If you move anything in or up or down from there, it's quite plausible. So I can actually take that and make it a little bit askew. So instead of going straight up and down here, I'm going to go and make that go all a bit to one side. Shadow that goes under here. And then the shadow that's down here, again, I can go and pull it all a little bit to one side, so that it's like my mouth is leaning a bit in my face. Then I'll do not terribly big lips. And again, I don't have terribly big lips. I don't really need to go and make them too much smaller. Blue lips. Now, over here with this wart, I'm going to want to put a shadow underneath. So, at this point, I may want to go and try the spirit gum and see if I can get the other wart to go on. If the wart, however, continues to not want to go on, I simply can paint on a wart using the highlight and shadow. So, now, this is the first layer of shadow using primarily the blue. I'm going to use some of the purple to be the darkest parts of the shadows. So, blend a little of that, and eyes here. Now, because there's a little bit of a warmer color to the purple, even though it's darker, I'm going to use that as the cheek shadow. Because it's suggestive of red, as it has a little red in it. And so, having a little bit of it in the area where ladies who wear too much makeup put in their blush actually is not going to look quite as jarring as the blue. I just thin it out in spots. So it starts out looking sort of like a pinky purpley rouge in the pale section in the center of my cheek. But as it goes toward the back, it becomes a very dark shadow. Any areas I've forgotten? Ah, yes, and the darkest bits of shadow right under here, and right under here, and the parts of the fake nose. Sides. Now let's do some on the tip to shorten it. I have a very warty nose. Now, highlighter. Oh, my spirit gum is ready. Let's see if I can get it to stay. I suspect that one's going to come off again. Let's leave it to sit there before I repaint it, just in case it wants to fall off my face again, at which point I'll just paint on something. Now, my highlighter is Screaming Yellow from Hot Topic. It's very bright with a little translucence, so it tends to just, when it blends out, to turn into a sort of neon green. Now this illustrates how, by having the center of the lines go through where my actual forehead wrinkles want to move, when you move it, it actually goes with you instead of fighting you, which is very nice. So the highlight goes in all the places that you normally use it in an old age character makeup. The difference is that you're simply doing it in a different color. This should illustrate not only how to do noses, but how you can use one of these things where the internal logic of it has you using a color that doesn't make sense in the real world, but which is appropriate in fantasy. A good fantasy makeup is still based to a great extent on reality. you just change one or two things. And the rest of it you go and make the most of what you've learned while doing the more realistic makeup. So the highlighter is pretty well exactly in the same places I'd put it if I were doing this in flesh tones for an old age or middle age character. It works under the same basic principle. You've just transposed it into neon yellow and screaming green, metallic, and electric blue and purple. Now, highlighter on the top of my wart and on the top of this. Make sure I get my wart with its own separate little highlighter so it shows up ideally as a wart. And I'm going to make sure that my highlighter makes the most of that crooked nose. And sides of the nostrils. And under here. Under the eye. So this is like a lopsided version of the Ivan the Terrible's aunt looking makeup that I did for the scary old lady. It's a scary old lady, but with unusual color choices. Still doing blending, still figuring out where the highlight and shadow is. You're just doing it with a color palette that's a lot more extreme. This way you can go and do makeup for theater design, where you have your costume designs and your set designs and your lighting designs and everything you're doing for a show is not realistic. You don't want to have a whole bunch of very realistic makeup, but you want to go and know enough about how to go and do a realistic makeup that you can go and do the same kinds of things in a very stylized manner. Now, the wart has not fallen off. And this one will give you a ringside view of how to go and do the highlight and shadow and so on. First thing, cover that with the green as best I can. Come on, stay on, stay on. Then a bit of blue shadow on the underside. Strong purple shadow to show the lower edge, and then the highlight of the screaming yellow-green as my brush goes flying. Now, if that wart had refused to stay there, chances are I'd still want a wart somewhere. Probably there. However, say I want to have a wart in some place that really it's just going to keep falling off, like right here. here is a place on my face that every time I move my face, there's like a little wrinkle that forms and it would drop anything off. So I want a wart here. I can do something that will pass for a wart at a distance. Won't have this lovely 3D effect, but it will work for all purposes at a distance. And I take and do that little underline in purple. I do a blue shadow. And I put in the yellow highlight. I think I need a little more purple shadow. The edge. Not quite as good as this, but it will do if you have things that keep falling off your face. Use the dimensional parts in the places where it's easy for it to work, and if you then add extra stuff in the two-dimensional paint, it will usually be convincing, especially if you have parts of your face that are being three-dimensional. The assumption is that, oh, well, these just stick out a little more, and this one is not so extreme. So, neck, you do the same kind of thing that you did in one of the old age characters. You'd simply use these sets of colors for highlight and shadow of that nature. Something else you could do also is if you've got something where you're having it show a little bit but not too much, like you've got a feathery thing, you know, hi there, I'm wearing a feather boa for my Wicked Witch. You can go and do something that only half uses that isn't quite so complicated. It just stylizes the highlight and shadow. So, for instance, this is just a series of stripes going down the neck that's suggestive of the kind of thing that you get in tendons of the neck, but it's not too specific. It's very quick. So, and we get the nose in profile, the warts. And that's my witch. You might want to, in something like this, if you don't have very much eyebrows, you might want to go and do something that will make the eyebrows bump up more by going and using some of your shadow in them. I have pretty dark eyebrows, so I usually can get away without doing that. And do that. Another thing that's very fun with fantasy makeups is cosmetic glitter. Don't use normal glitter for this. Don't use Christmas tinsel glitter or the kind that you can use on scenery, whatever you want. Cosmetic glitter, which is supposed to be 004 or 008, I can't remember which, microns. Very, very tiny glitter. Similar to the kind that you use for scrapbooking. Very fine glitter. And what you can do is you can use that as a highlighter if you want to make a fantasy makeup look more extreme. Now to do that, you take the same makeup. Wait, I should do the talking with this and then, oh, whatever. Okay. Since this is one of the makeups sort of done. Okay, let's see, this is Tara McGinnis and this is Theatrical Makeup Design Interactive. Okay. Hello, this is Tara McGinnis, and this is Theatrical Makeup Design Interactive. Hello, this is Tara McGinnis, and this is Theatrical Makeup Design Interactive. Okay. Yeah, you know what it's doing is it's making me think more about the design stuff. Ironically.
Okay, right.
Yes, yes. As I mostly think of it as, you know, hi, you're a poor dumb actor. Let's see how you can be taught to do what I put on a rendering. Okay. If you're going to use glitter as an extra punch on your highlight, and usually I suggest using glitter as a highlight. You can get black glitter and purple glitter and dark colored glitter, and it's nice to use it, but mainly what you want to use glitter for is highlights. So the main colors of glitter you actually want are silver and gold, or yellow colors or pale pink colors, really light colors that are going to be used as part of a highlight. Now sometimes you want to go and have somebody who's completely glittery, at which point you want to go and have a blue glitter here, and a yellow glitter there, and a purple glitter there. So the whole thing is glittery, but you still have your highlights and shadows happen. However, most of the time you're just going to want a little bit of glitter. And when you want just a little bit of glitter, pick a color that matches your highlight as closely as possible. So the other thing you're going to want to do is get some sort of face cream. Anything that's sticky. You can use hair gel, you can use face cream, you can use cream-based makeup. Anything that just has a little bit of stickiness, you can use to stick cosmetic glitter onto your face. Probably the best is this kind of sticky stuff. This is Nivea cream in the travel size, and I keep it in my kit just for sticking on glitter. I don't use it to take the makeup off. And you pick spots in your highlighter where you want extra glitz. And you paint a little bit of the cream or your hair gel onto those spots after you've put on your regular highlighter. And then you take a little bit of glitter on the tip of your finger and, closing your eyes, put it on the area. If you wear contacts, I don't suggest using this kind of glitter anywhere near your eyes. The reason is, the glitter, though it's tiny and fairly safe in a lot of other ways, if you put it on your eye and it gets in behind your contact lens, it's going to hurt like crazy. There you're going to be up on stage going and having a painful eye for days, and possibly even causing minor injury to your eye. This is not what you want to do. So if you're wearing contact lenses, don't use glitter anywhere in this area, because it will find a way of falling into your eyes and being a problem. Now, I'm going to take a little bit more of the cream and I'm going to put it on other spots on my face.
If you're going to do much more, I need to change the tape.
No, it isn't much more. This is sort of an extra thing I thought of.
No problem.
Yes, I'm going to put glitter on my warts. And here, because I want all those warts to show up. All the coolest witches have glitter on their warts. So, glitter on the eyes, glitter on the warts, and let's say just a little bit through here where there's that long highlight that I want to emphasize. Because if I emphasize this section of my face, because this is one of the most mobile parts of my face, when I smile, when I frown, whenever, that glitter is going to give it a lot of extra punch for everything I do. It's going to wiggle every time I talk. Same thing for lips. I want to go and put just a bit in the center highlight of that lower lip. And maybe just a hair on the upper lip, these little lopsided sections. Okay. So, let that sit there for a bit. It's very helpful if you close your eyes tightly and someone else blow on it, which blows the excess glitter off. Glitter gets everywhere. It will get into all your makeup. You will have it with you forever. No way around it. It's just there. However, it's really lovely for making, in a very large house, an extreme character like this. A character like this is likely to pop out from a hole in the floor and, scare small children. That kind of thing. And so all the fact that the glitter is there so that every little thing you do not only moves and exaggerates, but it has this twinkle as you're doing it. It's a really nice way of making something be pretty and interesting at the same time as it's scary, suitable for frightening small children. It frightens small children, but it also makes them go, "Ooh, it's the witch!" So, for the last little bit, what I want to do is clean off my teeth. Dry them as much as possible, and then use some of this wax. Now, you can go and take it and use a section of it to just blot out a single tooth like this. However, it's not very stable, so bits of that tooth will start to reappear over time. However, the best use of this cobbler's wax or tooth wax is actually to rub it in irregularly into teeth to give you that, my teeth have gone bad luck. And it gives you a really patchy appearance on the teeth. So it's a fairly simple thing to do for a final appearance that is just so special. See, I just escaped from Discworld, where there's quite a lot of witches. I'm a party witch myself. Very disco. Disco world instead of Discworld. So, okay, to remove the tooth wax, all you do is wipe it off. That's it. Very simple.
Is there any water or anything on the rag?
This has rag. It's actually easier if I hadn't had this one, if I just use a plain Kleenex.
Okay.
So, to remove the wax of your nose, there are two ways to go. If it has already started to work its way off of your face, you can just wiggle your nose to an extreme degree, and that will usually loosen it enough that you can literally pick it up and pull it off. If, however, it's insisting on sticking to your face, which in a perfect universe it will, what you do is you get yourself some dental floss, or in this case I've got artificial sinew so that you can see it better than you could see dental floss. Any other kind of strong thread-like substance, so heavy thread, any of those things. And you go and pull it down across and then lift it off. And that pulls the major amount of it off of your face. The rest you're going to want to go and take off simply using hot water and a towel. You'll use various creams to get your makeup off, but the wax, while it doesn't have anything in that would mess with your skin, other than the fact that it's wax and it's going to try and stick to your face, the only thing that really gets it off is hot water. So you use a towel soaked in hot water and rub it off. However, this makes it easier to get parts off. You don't want to reuse the wax if you've been using an unnatural color. In a perfect universe, you don't want to reuse your wax at all, because when you get makeup into it, you get the color of the makeup into it. And even if you're using just something that matches your base, the makeup is a bit softer than the wax. And so even if you're being cheap, and sometimes I am cheap, I use it more than once when it's a flesh tone, after 2 or 3 times of doing that, you've worked in enough makeup that you've softened it to a degree that it's no longer useful. They also make slightly harder forms of the wax for people who have faces that like to repel it. And as I say, there's another method of doing this with cotton balls and spirit gum that is a bit more complicated to deal with. So, pulling all that fun stuff off, and now I'm going to go and use hot water.